Sounds crazy, but Kobe spoke this. He spoke this. He used to say all the time, I want to die young. And
Really?
I thought he was he used to say, I want to die young. I want to be immortalized. And, I want to have my career be better than Michael Jordan, and I want to die young. And I just thought he was just so crazy for saying that.
Alright guys, peace. Here's a long-awaited video. I'm going to be explaining how Kobe Bryant's death was not an accident, and in fact, like most things in this world, it was scripted. Now if that sounds like this, that's because it is. This is my, it's just my brainstorm here. But don't worry, I've refined it, gone over it with a fine-tooth comb to make sure you have a pleasant viewing experience. And that's just my outline here. I've edited the video as well. So you're going to get a nice finished product here. Just give me some time to develop it. I'm basically putting together a puzzle here, and just like you do with any big puzzle, you start with the edges first, right? It's a lot easier, but it's not going to give you a full picture for a while. So give me some time to get into this, okay? I'll also add, Kobe Bryant played in Los Angeles, which is where Hollywood is. So he's intricately tied to the center of everything. The sport and entertainment industry, it moonlights as a propaganda machine. Yeah, so I'm gonna get into all of that. Don't worry too much about it. And what's really at the top of everything, if that makes any sense. Again, I understand it's gonna sound like crazy talk. Just give me a chance to get my point across. Okay, so we'll jump in here with some warm-ups real quick, just so you can get acquainted with what's to come. All right, this red square right here is Washington D.C. Most of you know that is the capital of the United States. But most of you don't know that it's situated between Virginia and Maryland. Now, Virginia is Virgin Land, Maryland is Mary's Land, and together you get the Virgin Mary's Land. And don't worry too much about what it means. All I want you to think about right now with these examples is this just a coincidence? Because that's most people's defense is, oh, that's just a coincidence. It's just hubris. They don't want to look at anything. Willful ignorance. And you know the rest, okay? So ask yourself with these examples, is it just a coincidence? And then I'll piece it together at the end what it's all about, okay? So let's look at the next slide here. This is Beyonce, okay? And this is the goddess Hathor. Okay, is it just a coincidence? Well, let's take a look at Hathor, and it says here she was often depicted as a cow. Again, you tell me, is this just a coincidence? Here's another look. You can pause this at any time if you want, but we're gonna move on here. This is Oprah on the cover of one of her magazines, Oprah magazine, or her magazine. Let's see what it says. Every woman needs a little mystery and a lot of color. Okay, take a good look again. We're going to show you where that's from. Now, this is a concept in the Bible called the Whore of Babylon. The Whore of Babylon. And before you get defensive of Oprah, let's read the passages from the book of Revelations that this comes from. Lines 4 and 5 of chapter 17. And the woman was arrayed in purple and scarlet color, and decked in gold and precious stones and pearls. And upon her forehead was a name written, Mystery. So let's take another look again at that cover. So what are they telling you about Oprah here? Who is she in the industry? Okay, we'll get to all of that. All right, now this last slide here, again, be patient. It's going to be from an episode of Friends. It's called The One with the Lesbian Wedding.
Hi.
This is Carol. She's having the lesbian wedding.
Hi, how's it going? Oh, it's going great. Right on schedule. Got my little happy helpers.
This is Monica. She's catering the wedding.
That's fine, whatever.
What's the matter?
And this is Ross. He's Carol's ex-husband, whom she divorced because she's a lesbian.
Nothing. Okay, everything. I think we're calling off the wedding.
What?
You're still gonna pay me, right?
Okay, so Carol's having second thoughts about the wedding. Okay, and Ross, the good guy ex-husband, is going to influence her to follow through with it. And they're going to show you who Ross really is. And if you don't believe me, wait till the end, because they're going to tell you. They're going to tell you exactly who he's meant to be. And just remember, this happened in 1995, this episode, season 2. So it's not, it was a big deal. It was actually banned from some states because of the lesbian kiss during the wedding scene at the end of this episode. So this is a very big deal, all right? Now listen carefully to this next scene.
And then Susan and I got in this big fight because I said maybe we should call off the wedding. And then she said, we're not doing this for them, we're doing it for us. And if I couldn't see that, then maybe we should call off the wedding. I don't know what to do.
I can't believe I'm going to say this, but I think Susan's right.
You do?
Look, do you love her? And you don't have to be too emphatic about this.
Of course I do.
Well, then that's it. And if George and Adelaide can't accept that, then the hell with them. Look, I mean, if my parents didn't want me to marry you, no way that would have stopped me. But, look, this is your wedding. Do it.
All right. So did you catch that? And look who they're getting to influence this person to follow through with the LGBT wedding. Because remember, this is back in the 90s, back when it was a very Christian nation, and that was strictly prohibited. So if the nation's God was against it, who do you think the people who are for it, who do you think their God is? And I know that sounds ridiculous. Just bear with me. They're going to tell you exactly who this is supposed to be at the end of the scene here in a couple moments. But right after this, right, listen very carefully to how they have Carol respond to Ross here, and how they want you to respond to their God.
You're right. Of course you're right.
So we're back on?
We're back on.
You heard the woman? Peel, chop, devil! Can't believe I lost 2 minutes.
Lucifer, dawn of the morning, I'm gonna chase you out of earth. Lucifer, dawn of the morning.
I'm from the murder capital, where we murder for capital.
Lucifer, dawn of the morning, I'm gonna chase you out of
you did it again, you a genius, nigga.
Lucifer, dawn of the morning.
So you niggas change your attitude for they asking what happened to you. Lord forgive him, he got them dark forces in him, but he also got a righteous cause for sending them to murder me. So I gotta murder them first, emergency. Doctors performing procedures, Jesus. I ain't trying to be facetious, but vengeance is mine, said the Lord. You said it better than all.
Possible. I mean, as basketball players, we're really supposed to shut up and dribble. But I'm glad we did a little bit more than that. Thank you, Academy, for this amazing honor. Thank you, John Williams, for.
So you were excited to meet Frances McDormand. That you just couldn't believe you were talking to.
Allison is incredible, and I think for us personally, me and Hermione Granger was like.
Oh, really? You love Harry Potter, right?
Of course, she's transitioned out of that sense, right?
Yeah, right. But not to you. You're going to keep her in there.
Yeah, she's Hermione to us, right? And I met her when she was really, really young. She came to a Laker game, and but to see her there with my wife, that was pretty cool.
What parties did you guys go to afterward?
So we did Vanity Fair. Yeah, we did the Vanity Fair party.
I have a little present for you. It's something, I don't know if you'll use this, but I want you to have this because I think this would be great. This is for Oscar, actually, not for you.
Oh,
got
nice.
a little
That's awesome.
jersey for him. And then,
That is awesome.
if you win another Oscar, or maybe you just want to change it out, you can just put that right.
That's so sweet.
Oscar doesn't have arms. So there you go.
Now, isn't it funny that Kobe Bryant won an Oscar, a basketball player, and then he also got to work with John Williams, the famous composer, who worked on Harry Potter, by the way. Now, he is in Hollywood, he is interconnected, so it's not totally inconceivable. But if we look a little bit into the Oscar and what it's actually about, it might be even less inconceivable than you first thought. So let's go and read this here. It says, was the Oscar statuette modeled and named after ancient Egyptian gods? And it points out Ptah, the god of artists and craftsmen. Again, don't worry too much about what it means. Let's just take a look at these statues here. There's a couple of other examples. You can decide for yourself. Looks remarkably similar. You think it's just a coincidence? Or do you think maybe these people are onto something? So let's read a bit more about it. This is from the Art Institute of Chicago. They say that these statuettes were placed in burial chambers with the deceased to help the ancient Egyptians transition from the earthly realm to the afterlife. Right, so that would explain why Kobe won this thing, because they knew way ahead of time that he was gonna be deceased. Remember, he died in 2020. This was in 2018, so this was a plan, and this was part of a ritual that they do. Okay, let's read another thing here. This is from the Museum of Fine Arts, Budapest, and it says that these things These burial equipment suggests that the deceased were hoped to become a divine being similar to Ptah Osiris after death, possessing his creative energies and his ability for rebirth at the same time. Right? So resurrection. So maybe they believe Kobe's going to come back to life, so they're not too worried about him. Okay, so here's another look. Looks remarkably similar. Alright, now if you're really keen, you would have noticed that in the background here, this thing looks remarkably like a pyramid. Right? It makes more sense now. Instead of a spotlight, like the spotlight shining on the statue, the award, it's a pyramid. So here's a couple of other images of that same logo, and it makes more sense. It's a pyramid with the god Ptah in front of it, right? So what are they telling you about Kobe Bryant when they have this here, when they align him with this god? What are they telling you about him in the industry?
White rabbit. You're 2 hours late.
I know. It's her fault.
You got the money?
$2,000.
Hold up.
Hallelujah. You're my savior, man. My own personal Jesus Christ.
Alright, now we'll come back to this scene later, but for now I wanted to point out this book they hid in there, Simulacra and Simulation. It's a famous philosophy book by Jean Baudrillard here. And here's another book, A Man and His Symbols by Carl Jung. These two kind of get over the importance of symbols, but it should be pretty straightforward. Okay, this should be self-explanatory, but basically if a picture paints 1,000 words, that means a picture is just a very effective and efficient way to communicate. A symbol is just a simplified picture, so it's an even more efficient way to communicate. And this is really how our brain works. Our brain doesn't take time to code things into words, right? And you know this because people speak different languages to say the same thing, right? So what is that same thing? Those are encoded as symbols in the mind. So that's why it's so important, okay? So let's go back to this symbol here. Does it look familiar? Look at that. It's even the same proportions. So everyone knows about this freaky deaky thing on the US dollar bill. So let's just go into it real quick. So starting at the top, we have what's called the Eye of Providence, also known as God in Christian language. Now the eye is encased in a triangle, which represents the Holy Trinity. If you remember in Matrix, the lead female is named Trinity. That stands for the observer, the creator, and the creation. Otherwise symbolized as the Father, His Son, and the Holy Spirit. And the Holy Spirit has long been symbolized as a dove. Okay, the other component to this is the capstone, right? Like a baseball cap. That is the final stone that goes on the pyramid. It symbolizes the finishing touches, the final step in a great work. For example, if you studied engineering or business, you may have had a capstone project, which symbolizes the end of your great work, your degree, right? It summarizes everything. Now, the final thing to point out here is that it is illuminated. So keep that in mind as we watch these next few clips here. And again, don't worry too much about what anything means. We're just trying to identify a theme. I'm not trying to explain the theme just yet. Just trying to identify that it is in fact a theme. Okay, we're going to start here with a show Kobe did with ESPN called Details.
Welcome to Detail.
Look familiar? Now let's watch the actual title sequence of the show. And one more.
How much more do you want from me?
More.
How much more successful do you want me to be?
More successful.
How many records can my records break?
more records.
But I'm the best.
But are you a different animal and the same beast?
What the does that mean, Kobe Bryant?
You're welcome.
Alright, so you can compare and contrast these photos all you want. Feel free to pause anything at any point that you need to, but I gotta move through. There's a lot to get through here. If you notice, behind Aziz Ansari here, you have an image that was seen in that ad of Kobe Bryant with the one eye covered. Alright, so here's another look at that same image. Alright, so this image was in that ad with Kanye West, and it was always, the pyramid was illuminated in the same ad as well. It means something. Don't worry too much about what it means right now, but I'm sure you've seen it before, like images of all these celebrities covering one eye. You probably thought it was just a coincidence, right? There's a quote. It says, "Everyone gets a call, but not everyone answers," and that in that way, it is kind of a test. But we'll get to that later. Right now, let's go listen to his wife Vanessa Bryant speak at his funeral.
Kobe loved me more than I could ever express or put into words. He was the early bird, and I was the night owl. I was fire, and he was ice, and vice versa at times.
Now, what an inconvenient hairstyle when you gotta read a speech. Now, let's look back at that first photo. You tell me, is it just a coincidence? I could do a whole 1 hour video on just this type of imagery. But instead, we're gonna move along, and let's go back to the Matrix and meet Morpheus.
This is it. Let me give you one piece of advice. Be honest. He knows more than you can imagine.
You see that? Now, I can't make it more obvious than that. Alright, here's a better look. Alright, pause it if you want. Let's move on.
At last.
Hallelujah. You're my savior, man. My own personal Jesus Christ.
You get caught using that.
Yeah.
Now get up.
Who is that? Hagrid's carried. Neville, who is it?
Harry Potter! He's dead!
No! No!
Professor? Is this all real? Or is it just happening inside my head?
Of course it's happening inside your head, Harry. Why should that mean that it's not real?
Remus? Tonks? All of them. They didn't die in vain. But you will. Because you're wrong. Harry's heart did beat for us. For all of us. It's not over.
Alright, first of all, shout out to whoever did Voldemort's costume design. He looks great. And now we can piece this together. We know that these three guys were all what? They were all resurrected. Jesus, Neo, and Harry Potter. And why is that? Is this just based on the Bible? Because they read the Bible, the creators read the Bible, and it's a very influential story? Or do they understand something about it that they're trying to get across to the masses? So that's what I'm going to explain in this video, is what it is that they're trying to get across to the masses. It is much bigger than you could even imagine. It's kind of cartoonish, but just bear with me. I'll get to it, okay? Now you also have this theme going on here. You had Sirius Black in the movie or in the series, and he dies in the 5th book. You also had Albus Dumbledore, Albus meaning white, he dies in the 6th book. And then you have Rubius Hagrid, Rubius meaning red, and he brings Harry back from the forest, right? The Forbidden Forest that he started everything off in. He brings him right back out in the 7th book. So that all means something, and we'll get to it. I appreciate your patience at this point. We can finally take a deeper dive. I still need your patience though, but we'll look into Osiris and Ptah now. So let's look at Osiris quickly. All right, this is all from the paragraph on the right. He's a god of the afterlife, the dead, and resurrection. His brother in his mythology cut him into pieces and scattered them around the world. And then his wife Isis collected all the pieces in order to resurrect Osiris. Now you'll also notice he has green skin, which is supposed to represent vegetation, which represents death and rebirth and resurrection. And he's also got his arms crossed, and that represents the crossroads, right? He's a god of the crossroads. He's the king of the underworld, and that's why they met at King's Cross Station. That was the liminal space between the earthly realm and the spirit realm. And he went and met Dumbledore, who was dead at that point, right? So at the doorway to the spirit realm. So that's what all these symbols mean. That's what that cross symbolizes. It's the crossroads. Okay. So what is Kobe Bryant's infatuation with Harry Potter? Well, let's go to that next.
Oh, you are a nerd.
Totally.
You love Harry Potter.
Yep.
Everything Harry Potter.
Yes.
All things Harry
Everything. Huge Harry Potter nerd.
What is it about Harry Potter that you love?
The story.
Yeah.
It's a brilliant story. I have a possession in my house that is the most valuable possession to me. I have 3 things. And one of them is a Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone, 1st edition, signed by J.K. Rowling.
Wow.
If the house is burning, I'm grabbing that.
That's it? Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah, I see. So, all right, let's talk about the podcast. It's a coincidence I was talking about podcasts today, but you have a podcast, and it's called Punies.
The Punies, yeah.
And it's it's really good. I was listening to the first one today. Explain what it is.
So the Punies is a collection of kids that just have fun playing sports. And I came up with the show because my kids just get tired of hearing me trying to preach life lessons to them. They get sick of hearing it. So I figured I got to infuse it in content. And I feel sports is the greatest metaphor for life. So if you want to teach kids valuable life lessons, do it through sports.
And so next time you go to one of the games, we got something for you to wear.
All right. Yeah, I would definitely wear that.
Yeah, good. We can't wait to see pictures of you in that.
Yeah. My name would be Mamba Mort.
All right, you have a wand, you have... All right.
I want to talk about this. This is awesome. This is the Wizard Nerd series.
Yeah. I had to try to describe it to somebody when I first came up with the idea. They were like, "What is it?" You got to give them like elevator pitch.
Oh, yeah. Elevator. Yeah. What can you pitch me in an elevator?
Harry Potter, Olympics, had a baby. This is what we're making. And they looked, they were like, kind of weird, but okay, I get it.
So after Kobe's career, he transitioned to some type of great sage, trying to teach children things. You know, we're supposed to believe he cares about teaching kids when he was a complete asshole his whole life. But also they knew he was going to die too. So this was all right before his death. They're trying to get it out there. But, you know, the frame is done now. We're going to get into the meat and potatoes of this.
I had you looking in the wrong section. How could I be so stupid? I checked this out weeks ago for a bit of light reading. This is light. Of course, here it is. Nicholas Flamel is the only known maker of the Philosopher's Stone.
The what?
Honestly, don't you two read? The Philosopher's Stone is a legendary substance with astonishing powers. It'll transform any metal into pure gold and produces the elixir of life, which will make the drinker immortal.
Immortal?
It means you'll never die.
I know what it means.
The only stone currently in existence belongs to Mr. Nicholas Flamel, the noted alchemist, who last year celebrated his 665th birthday. That's what Fluffy's guarding on the 3rd floor. That's what's under the trapdoor. The Philosopher's Stone.
Alchemy, the science of understanding, deconstructing, and reconstructing matter. However, it is not an all-powerful art. It is impossible to create something out of nothing. If one wishes to obtain something, something of equal value must be given. This is the law of equivalent exchange.
Alright, we've all heard of the Philosopher's Stone before. You've probably seen it in multiple movies, TV shows, books. But you may not know that it has a deep and long history, and it's actually very significant in the development of different countries, including the United States. So let's read up on it here and get an idea of what it's all about. So the Philosopher's Stone is a mythic alchemical substance capable of turning base metals, such as mercury, into gold or silver. It was also known as the tincture and the powder. Alchemists additionally believed that it could be used to make an elixir of life, which made possible rejuvenation and immortality. It's kind of like resurrection, right? So for many centuries, it was the most sought-after goal in alchemy. The Philosopher's Stone was the central symbol of the mystical terminology of alchemy, symbolizing perfection at its finest, divine illumination, and heavenly bliss. Efforts to discover the Philosopher's Stone were known as the magnum opus, or the great work. Right, so remember, a capstone is the completion of a great work. So let's take a look at a couple of examples of known alchemists that you will be familiar with. Perhaps the most famous one is Isaac Newton. Famous scientist, invented calculus, discovered gravity or contributed to it. All right, Carl Jung as well, one of the famous psychiatrists in recent history. His work is heavily based on alchemy. I'm sure you know that the word psyche means soul in Greek. Okay, now let's watch this next clip. This is going to be a more modern example of a very famous alchemist.
I consider myself an alchemist. An alchemist is basically a mystical chemist, right? And one of the great feats that alchemists used to do is they would take lead, just take a chunk of lead, and they could turn lead into gold, right? So the symbolism.
Sounds like a good hustle.
I know, right?
Welcome to the Pretty Intense Podcast. Thank you for coming by to listen. Today's show is a real treat. If you're at all into like spirituality or consciousness, this is the show for you. Or even just like how to live your life to achieve your highest timeline. The guest today is Sarah El-Khaldi. She's a mystic spiritual teacher and author. She goes by The Alchemist on Instagram and YouTube. And she has incredible content on the nature of this reality and how the universal laws play into our experience. We just unpacked what reality is. Timelines, dimensions, duality, purpose, dharma. These are all big topics that we dive into.
So Will Smith alluded to the material example of turning lead into gold, which is something that they did do. But there's also a spiritual element to it too, where that was a metaphor for achieving divine perfection. So let's read on what that means. Magnum opus in the context of alchemy. So in alchemy, the magnum opus, or great work, is a term for the process of working with the prima materia to create the Philosopher's Stone. Prima materia just means the prime matter. It has been used to describe personal and spiritual transmutation in the Hermetic tradition, attached to the laboratory process and chemical color changes, used as a model for the individuation process, and as a device in art and literature. The magnum opus has been carried forward in New Age and Neo-Hermetic movements, which sometimes attach new symbolism and significance to the process. The original process philosophy has 4 stages: Negredo, Albedo, Citrinitas, and Rubedo. Right? So it's really 3 phases that it's most famous for: Negredo, Albedo, and Rubedo. Albedo and Rubedo, which is black, white, and red. So that's what this is all about, and that's what the book of Harry Potter is about. J.K. Rowling is an alchemist. She studies that a lot, and she's trying to teach the masses all of the stages, the entire process of that. So here's an article from 2015 about a bunch of Harry Potter quotes that Kobe Bryant has made in his life, and this one is pretty telling. Again, this was on Kimmel, but back in 2007, he said, "We just bought an Akita dog, and he's all white, so I named him Dumbledore." So again, I asked, do you think that's just a coincidence? And I get that this is pretty far-fetched, man. I know. That's why I've been researching it for a long fucking time, dotting my I's, crossing my T's. Because if you just lean on other people, they're going to gaslight you into thinking you're crazy. Right? Right? In fact, that's how they've kept this a secret, is they gaslight you. They've gaslit the masses, and they've convinced them to gaslight each other into thinking this shit is crazy talk and whatnot. So let's get back on track here and look at more on the magnum opus. The ultimate goal of alchemy is a process known as the great work, or the magnum opus in Latin. This involves spiritual transformation, the shedding of impurities, the joining of opposites, and the refinement of materials. Exactly what the end result of this profound transformation is varies from author to author. It could be self-realization, communion with divinity, or fulfillment of purpose, and so on. Right? So me scrapping together all this information, purifying it, putting it into this video, that's kind of the process they're describing, except on a spiritual scale. Now here's some more information on those 3 stages I just described. I'll summarize it for you. Negretto, or the blackening, is basically the breaking down of everything. You burn everything down. Albedo, or whitening, is the purification. You take out all the good parts, then you purify it. And then in rubedo, the reddening stage, that's the final transformation. That's when everything comes together. You bring together opposites, so that's a duality standpoint. But I want to read this last sentence here for you. It says the final result of this is the rebus, which is just a symbol for this, another symbol, described as a spiritual hermaphrodite and often depicted as a 2-headed being, right? Because the opposites have come together, they've created a whole new being, and that's one symbol that they have for that is the rebus. Now, the phoenix bird is also another symbol because of the red color, but we'll get to that in a bit. Okay, so here's an image of the rebus. You can see the ball at the bottom looks like that from the sport Quidditch in Harry Potter, the golden snitch. You can see the 2-headed, 1 man, 1 female, and is a divine hermaphrodite. This is, by the way, why transgenderism is so promoted today, and they're basically the most protected class on this planet, on the Western world, other than black women, but that's neither here nor there. And we're going to talk about the next symbol, though. We'll move on here. This is the phoenix bird. So let's read this. Phoenixes represent the rubedo stage of the great work. This is the completion of soul development and transformation. When a phoenix builds its myrrh twig nest, that means it will ignite soon. After it goes up in flames, a baby phoenix rises out of the ashes. Alchemists take this process and look at it in a spiritual perspective. When the alchemist going through the great work has integrated his being beyond a certain point, he no longer needs to be dependent on his physical body as a foundation for his being. This is why Kobe sacrificed his life. He was done. He didn't need his physical body anymore. His spiritual sureness is stable enough for him to stand. He has obtained the Philosopher's Stone, which in this sense isn't an actual stone, but instead the spiritual core of his being. His soul is completely freed from the boundaries of his physical body. So that's basically what happened with Kobe. I know that sounds far-fetched, so let's watch this next clip quickly, and it should solidify things. Alright, so think about what you just saw there, and then listen to what Kobe has to say here. He's going to do a funny little poetry slam, but hidden in jest is a bunch of metaphors and hints to all the stuff that we've just been talking about. Okay, so listen carefully to that, and then also watch carefully for the imagery.
Here to perform a slam poem about the 1990 sitcom Family Matters, Kobe Bryant.
Transformation. Urkel to Urkel. Suspenders to lapels. From Nerdy Steve, got any cheese? So puny and weak, and metamorphosis from geek to fleek. From caterpillar to butterfly. The cocoon, a metal chamber, rearranger of DNA. From naughty to hottie. Different person, same body. Using science and playing God, he became an Adonis. A charming disarmer with style and confidence. With the pull of a lever like the wave of a wand, he enters a nerd, but now he emerges Stefan. Ha! He laughs in the face of God. Is it a sin, though, to change who you are, to win the heart of Laura Winslow?
So hopefully you made the connection there between his poem and the last slide before it. That should show you what this is really about. But we'll come back to this later. He actually revealed a few things of what this is really about on a larger scale, but we're not ready for that yet. For now, let's just watch how they ended the skit and see if it looks familiar.
Did I do that?
So that basically wraps up my hypothesis. The rest of this video will flesh it out for you, and I'll have ample evidence along the way. But the 2 hours of part 1 and part 2 should be enough to cover all the essentials. Should be enough to satisfy you in those 2 hours. I will have more content after that, so if it isn't enough, you can look at that too. But the first 2 hours should tell you everything you need to know. It'll give you plenty of evidence to prove it. But the focus is going to be on proving it. So that if you have more questions, that'll be why the focus is going to be on evidence. But anyways, the hypothesis was that Kobe's death was not an accident. It was on purpose, and in fact, Kobe sacrificed himself. He was in on it. He wasn't murdered. Okay, and this was part of his religion. It was in accordance with his religion, and that religion is at the center of everything as we know it today. And that's what I'm going to go on to prove in this video. For now, let's just recap what we saw. So we started this off by looking at Kobe's Oscar, which was odd for him to win considering he was a recently retired professional athlete. But he won it anyways, and we looked at the Oscar and we saw how it was very similar to the ancient statuettes of Ptahkar Osiris. So we took a look at that and we saw that it was traditionally used to bury with the deceased to help them transition to the afterlife. And it was especially used for noteworthy people with the belief that it would help them become like gods, that their souls would transform into divine souls in the afterlife. And we saw them align Kobe with the Oscar on Jimmy Kimmel's show as well. Okay, that's going to be important for later. Then we looked at symbols here and the importance of symbols because it is the language of the mind and language of religions. But we looked at symbols for their gods, and that included the Eye of Providence or the all-seeing eye. Again, it just represents God. And we looked at the Trinity. Now, it's not too important what this means yet, but I do want to remind you that the dove is included in the Trinity. It represents the Holy Spirit. Right? And also in The Matrix, the lead female character was named Trinity. Alright, so keep all of that in mind as this video goes along. Then we looked at a couple of big Hollywood movies, and we'll look at several more throughout this video, but we noticed some themes that were in there, including this pyramid theme here. Here you see Morpheus in The Matrix with it. But there are several hidden themes all about what I'm going to cover in this video here. We're basically going to cover those themes. One of them was resurrection, and we already covered that. We saw how Harry Potter and Neo were both resurrected, much like Jesus, and we saw that Neo was directly referenced as Jesus in the movie. So we got Trinity and Jesus now in the Matrix, and we'll take a look at Harry Potter and the spirituality of that. And that spirituality, of course, is alchemy. So we looked at alchemy and we saw how it was very relevant in the history and the pop culture of our world. Especially in Harry Potter, it is directly influenced by alchemy. And we saw a hint of how that might be why Kobe Bryant is such a big fan of Harry Potter. But we'll get into that later. We saw examples of some famous alchemists as well, including Will Smith and Carl Jung. And we're going to get back to Danica Patrick in a second. And of course, we learned about the great work, also known as the magnum opus, which is symbolized as the rebus, right? And the great work is the process of alchemy, all the stages that lead you up to achieving the Philosopher's Stone or enlightenment or divine perfection. And we'll get into what that means later, okay? And this, of course, is why you have the pyramid on the dollar bill. It symbolizes the great work, and that capstone is the Philosopher's Stone. Okay, so we're going to look at what all of this means, including that rebus image. Keep this in mind. This is going to be very important for later. But you can see here duality is an important concept. You can see it in this image with the male and the female coming together. So we'll look at that next. Okay.
You just couldn't let me go, could you? This is what happens when an unstoppable force meets an immovable object. You truly are incorruptible, aren't you? Huh? You won't kill me out of some misplaced sense of self-righteousness. And I won't kill you because you're just too much fun. I think you and I are destined to do this forever.
All right, so now that we've gone through the background information and you know what my thesis is, basically, we should be able to move through this a lot faster. Again, don't be trying to understand this shit till it actually comes together, all right, which is going to start in these next couple of sections. But anyway, this section is going to be about duality, which is a crucial concept in these people's belief systems, which we're going to be going over soon enough. For now, you can see here in these images, that's what Batman and the Joker represent. Order and chaos, which is probably the most important application of duality, right? One can't exist without the other, and as you heard the Joker say, they're destined to do this dance forever. That's a huge part of their belief system, right? But they're teaching you these concepts through their movies. That's what the Marvel Universe is all about. It's literally just a copy of the old mythologies, and it all goes back to ancient Egypt. But instead of going through that, it would take too long. I got some clips here where the celebs are basically teaching you these things explicitly.
What is the fabric of our existence? What is the nature of this game? Like what builds this reality?
This universe has, as you may know, the Hermetic principles.
I do.
And so the basis of what's generating this universe is experiences that require and are of alchemy, because alchemy is using that catalyst, that shadow, to springboard. So everyone who can springboard off of their trials and tribulations or their, darker points is an alchemist. But that's what builds this reality. It's the tension of those opposites.
Every muse cage is powered by two forces. Light musings.
You're nice.
Oh, thank you.
You're great.
Oh, so nice of you.
And dark musings.
Worthless. You're a failure.
Make it stop.
Yeah, light musings make you feel good and happy.
Yeah.
Dark musings make you feel bad and angry.
Oh, I don't like dark musings.
Most people don't. But what they don't understand is that dark musings just may be our greatest source of energy and power.
Oh.
If you're looking for your inner beast, it's most likely living inside of a dark muse.
Really? I don't know. I don't like feeling bad and angry, but I do need to find my inner beast. What should I do? Do.
This is the face of a man with a dark muse cage. Darkness is the light in his eyes, he runs with rage. There's nothing you can do, there's nothing you can say. Hatred is the love in his heart, he plays with hate.
You see this shit? Dude said hatred is a love in your heart. Right? That's what they're trying to teach your children. That's only what they feel comfortable coming out with right now. To your children. Right? Imagine what's coming down the line. And that's why I make these videos, right? But first step, I gotta open your mind. And then I can earn your trust. And then I can really break shit down for you. But in this video, there's lots to get through. But I only want to point out the blue and the red here. Right? Those are the only colors they showed outside of the yellow, the main yellow theme. But this is because the blue and the red, it's an important symbol in their belief system. Right? White and black can do it as well, but they represent opposites in duality, and they represent good and evil specifically. So blue is good, red is evil, and they can come together in perfect harmony to make the divine purple or the divine hermaphrodite. But we'll get to that later with some examples. For now, just know that they believe that everyone has these two sides to them, good and evil, and it all comes down to the choices you make. You remember that's what the main theme in Harry Potter was. And this is true. The problem is they believe it's one and the same. And they want to express evil and normalize that. Okay? Let's watch the Steph Curry commercial here. It'll make it clearer. But really watch carefully and listen carefully too.
They say I'm a nice guy. That I only have a good side and a better side. But what they don't know is that I have another side. A darker side. A badder side. A side you don't want to be on the wrong side.
Hey, honey. Did you remember to get the milk?
So as I was saying, I can be merciless, ruthless, ravenous, relentless. Infinity, empower the drive.
And of course, here's the pyramid again with the illuminated pinnacle. Right? But you saw this here and they hide it in jest. He's deliberating between the blue and the red, representing our good and bad sides, and he has to make a choice. And what choice does he make? His bad side. Right? And he tells you throughout the clip that people think he's a nice guy, and we know he fronts as a Christian and all of this, but behind closed doors, he has a badder side. And I hope to show you what he means by that. We'll get to it in the next section.
For now, let's look at another example of the blue versus red choice. And I have more coming, by the way, but this is the most famous one.
After this, there is no turning back. You take the blue pill. The story ends. You wake up in your bed and believe whatever you want to believe. You take the red pill. You stay in Wonderland. And I show you how deep the rabbit hole goes.
All right, so let's look at this image here. This is from the Freemasons. We'll talk about it in a minute, but it carries a lot of symbolism for this entire belief structure I'm trying to tell you about. Okay, so look at those three pillars. We'll get to that in a second. But for now, I want to focus on these, the black and white at the bottom, the checkerboard floor. It's a very important symbol, again, symbolizing duality. And at the top, you can see the sun and the moon, same thing, historically important symbols, telling the same story about duality and opposites. And then in between those two things, you could see a staircase going from the bottom to the top, and it's illuminated at the top, a star at the top. And that process is a process of enlightenment. So when you have these enlightenment thinkers and the enlightenment age, this is what they're talking about. And that's really at the core of everything. That's why we celebrate all of these guys like Descartes and Nietzsche and so on. They really influence the creation of our society today. And this is a lot of what's behind it. So that star at the top, again, it's illuminated as we've shown with those pyramid images. That's what they're talking about. Okay? So let's go and look at some famous Freemasons right now, starting with Isaac Newton. All these things you can read on your own. Feel free to pause it. But here's a great list right here. You got founding fathers, Benjamin Franklin, George Washington. You got more former presidents. Andrew Jackson is here. You got Mozart on here. Gerald Ford is in here. And Buzz Aldrin, who allegedly landed on the moon. Now here we have Shaquille O'Neal. And here we have Manny Pacquiao. And if you look closely, boom, you got the checkerboard floor. And up top, you got the letter G. That was in that compass and square logo. I'll get to that later if I have time. But I just want to mention right now that there are levels to this, right? At these guys' levels, it's just networking. But as you get deeper and deeper in the craft, there's more to learn. All right, so this is the building that Jimmy Kimmel's show was filmed in. And what building is it? You guessed it. It's the Hollywood Masonic Temple. So who is Jimmy Kimmel behind closed doors? And what are they doing in this building when they're not filming the show? And here's George Washington, the first president of the United States, and he too was a Freemason. So you can see all of the symbolism here, and I've explained to you what it means, but that brings us back to this photo with Kobe Bryant, and check the pocket square. So this is from Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone. Remember, they played wizard's chess. So the black and the white coming together represents the clash of opposites that you have to overcome on your journey towards illumination. So they literally cross a checkerboard floor, or in this case a chessboard floor, to get to the Philosopher's Stone of enlightenment. So we've seen this checkerboard image now several times, and we know it symbolizes duality.
And we also know now it comes from the Freemasons, which is a fraternity or a lodge. A lot of important people have come through there. Okay? But let's take a look at this scene now, this wizard's chess scene that was at the end of the movie, the first movie in the Harry Potter series.
Wait a minute. You understand, right, Harry? Once I make my move, the Queen will take me. Then you're free to check the King.
No. Ron, no!
What is it? He's going to sacrifice himself. No, you can't! There must be another way! Do you want to stop Snape from getting that stone or not? Harry, it's you that has to go on. I know it. Not me, not Hermione, you. Knight to H3.
Don't forget, we're still playing.
So that should show that self-sacrifice is a part of this process of theirs, this alchemical great work or the pursuit of the Philosopher's Stone. And that if you want to achieve it, you have to sacrifice yourself. Right? And that's what Kobe Bryant did. But we'll go on to show a few more examples now of Freemason imagery in Hollywood movies. And keep in mind, these are the biggest films. Like, these are the biggest blockbuster films I'm showing you right now. Okay?
Now, these next few slides are from the movie Joker. There's a checkerboard floor there. Here's the staircase, and if you remember from the movie, he goes up and down the staircase. When he goes up the staircase, he's sad, he's depressed, he's in need of knowledge. And when he comes back down, he's gotten that knowledge, and all of a sudden he's happy and he's dancing because he's been enlightened. Here's a poster for the second movie. You see the pillars in the background, and if you look closely, you'll read these signs in the back. It says "Free Joker" and "I fear God, not clowns." So this is meant to subliminally implant these messages in your mind to free chaos, right? To open Pandora's box and to release chaos onto the world. And of course, they want you to be scared of God. They don't want you to love God. They want you to love the divine clown, which is a personification of chaos. And hopefully that explains a lot of what's going on today. But don't worry, stick with this because it's all going to come together later. And I had to include this one poster here because if you look closely, it looks like they photoshopped out this one pillar, this lamppost. And they kept the other three to represent those three pillars from the first painting I showed you, right? So here you go, those are those three pillars. They all represent something. But we got to move on, so let's look at this here. It's a much better image for the next scene. And you can see the staircase is winding because it's not a straight path forward to the top or straight path up. It's a winding path. And at the top here, you got, again, the illuminated triangle for the Trinity. That's the source of wisdom. It enlightens you. All right, now let's go back and meet Morpheus. Alright, so did you see that? At the top of the winding staircase, they had the light source. This is all happening in the mind, by the way. But what you'll see here often they'll do is they'll put the light behind someone's head. That's when that's meant to be the divine teacher, the illuminator. And in this case, it's the Trinity.
This is it. Let me give you one piece of advice. Be honest. He knows more than you can imagine.
At last. Welcome, Neo. As you no doubt have guessed, I am Morpheus.
So hopefully this is really clear. I can't make it any clearer than this. And who these people are supposed to represent. But now the question is, what story are they trying to tell? Are they just inspired by the Bible? Or is there something deeper going on here that they're trying to teach the masses.
What is it about Harry Potter that you love?
The story.
Yeah.
It's a brilliant story. I have a possession in my house that is the most valuable possession to me. I have 3 things. And one of them is a Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone, first edition, signed by J.K. Rowling.
Wow.
If the house is burning, I'm grabbing that.
That's it? Yeah.
Straight up, I'm grabbing that.
What are the other 2 things that are important to you besides that?
I have a Game of Thrones series signed to me by George R.R. Martin.
Uh-huh.
And I have
He's also a George R.R. Martin fan. And I wonder why. Right? It's because he's steeped in the exact same craft. That's what the blue and the red comes from, the ice and the fire. That goes back to Norse mythology. And all of it goes back to Saturn. So here's a book that kind of proves that.
Right, and here's a depiction of the god Saturn. Of course, the god doesn't look like anything like this, right? It's a non-physical entity. This is just a representation. But let's read this. It says, in ancient times, Saturn was associated with Kronos, the god of time. That's where the word chronological comes from. That's also why in the movie Interstellar with Matthew McConaughey, they featured Saturn in that scene, and they had a wormhole next to Saturn that they had to go through. Remember, there was time travel in that film. The summit was the Grim Reaper. You can see at the bottom here, Lord of the Rings. Yes, that's where the book and movie comes from. It's based on this. All right, so let's read a little bit on Saturn here. It's all from the right again. So Saturn, the planet, was originally tracked going back to ancient Babylon, now known as Egypt and Iran. It's known for being the judger that judges everything as good and bad. So that's where you get your like Saturn retrograde stuff. And then, of course, he's the god of agriculture, symbolizing the death and rebirth. But he's, again, the god of death. And this is why the Grim Reaper has a scythe. That's an important image. I know all of you know it. So where does fire versus ice come from? Well, in the ancient times, Saturn was known as the black sun because you could see it at night. But it was also the furthest planet from the sun that they discovered at the time. So if sun was the heavenly fire, Saturn was the ice planet. Now this is a very famous painting by Francisco Goya from Spain called Saturn Devours the Sun, showing the same symbolism. And here's the more modern depiction of that. Embiid devours his son when the MVP, Joel Embiid, drops 70 points on the rookie Vector Wembanyama. All right, so now let's go back to that speech that Vanessa Bryant gave at Kobe's funeral.
Kobe loved me more than I could ever express or put into words. He was the early bird, and I was the night owl. I was fire, and he was ice, and vice versa at times. We balanced each other out.
Right, so it's pretty obvious. Now, they speak cryptically, and once you accept the spiritual component, it's going to make a lot more sense why. But for now, let's just look at a couple other examples.
Bloody hell. Big one.
Peter Piper picked a peck of pickled peppers.
How much wood would a woodchuck chuck if a woodchuck could chuck wood?
I don't know what you came to do, but I ain't come to lose. Faster!
How much wood would a woodchuck chuck if a woodchuck could chuck wood?
Speed it up, speed it up, speed it up, speed it up.
Cause I'm feeling like I'm running and I'm feeling like I gotta get away, get away, get away. Better know that I don't and I won't ever stop. Cause you know I gotta win every day.
Doritos Blaze, a bold new flavor that brings the heat.
Hush your mouth. I told y'all mother, y'all can't stop me now. Listen to me now. I'm lasting 20 rounds. And if you want me.
And here you have Missy Elliott between the two pillars as the mother goddess image, representing the source of wisdom. And they got access to the source of wisdom by something called scrying. So again, you can read this if you want, but they look into reflective surfaces, usually a mirror or a crystal ball. And they can do things like divining, see in the future, or they can channel spirits. And that's what that whole ad was about. They channeled spirits. But let's look at a couple other examples of this.
Oh, dark crystal ball of Kansas City. Anything you ever need to know about sports lives in its light.
I've brought you a gift.
What is it?
It's a crystal. Nothing more. But if you turn it this way, look into it, it'll show you your dreams. But this is not a...
All right, right here we got Phil Jackson, who coached Kobe Bryant and Michael Jordan, for those of you who don't know. And yeah, he was steeped in all of this too. There's so much more to this.
Was there anybody there, besides obviously you were excited to meet Frances McDormand, that you just couldn't believe you were talking to?
Allison is incredible. And I think for us personally, me and Hermione Granger was like...
Oh, really? You love Harry Potter, right?
Of course, she's transitioned out of that sense, right?
Yeah, right. But not to you. You're going to keep her in there.
Yeah, she's Hermione to us, right? And I met her when she was really, really young. She came to a Laker game, and but to see her there with my wife, that was pretty cool.
All right, so you heard the phrase hermetic principles earlier. These are principles of Hermeticism, which is a philosophical and religious tradition rooted in the teachings attributed to Hermes Trismegistus, a syncretic figure combining elements of the Greek god Hermes and the Egyptian god Thoth. So and you'll see here it says alchemy, it's including aspects of alchemy. So that's at the heart of all of this that we're talking about right now. This is where the principles of duality come from. It comes from Hermeticism and bringing together opposites to make the divine hermaphrodite. So the blue and the red come together to make purple. That's the process of alchemy and Hermeticism. If you know the phrase hermetic seal, for those of you in engineering, you definitely know this phrase. It means airtight seal. And that comes from Hermeticism because this was a very, very secret belief system. They had to keep it a secret. You would die if you told the secrets of Hermeticism. So what are these principles that are so secretive you would die for that now are coming out? They're promoting it right in front of your face. And here's Hermes Trismegistus. This is Thoth. But I'm going to focus on Hermes, the Greek god. It was just another rendition of Osiris. They all get mixed together, split up, and put into different versions as these stories get retold throughout time. But I want to pay attention to the last sentence of the first paragraph. Hermes plays the role of the psychopomp, or soul guide, a conductor of souls into the afterlife. Right? So like they bury those statuettes of Osiris to guide you into the afterlife. Osiris is playing the role of a psychopomp, the soul guide between realms. All right, so that's an important word, psychopomp. We'll get back to it. But you can see here he's a god of boundaries and crossroads, as well as athletes, just like Kobe.
You'll see at the bottom symbols include
the talaria, which are the wing sandals. That's actually what the Nike logo is, believe it or not. You have the palm tree, which is the tree of Osiris. But you also have the goat, and you have the caduceus. So I know you recognize all of those symbols. You probably didn't know it's called the caduceus, or talaria for the wing sandals. But that's an important symbol. We'll come back to it. And how do you know Hermes is so central to Harry Potter? Well, Hermione is the female name for Hermes. And remember, gender doesn't matter too much here. This concept is genderless. It's androgynous. And so that's why they can go back and forth here. And that's actually where the word hermaphrodite comes from. Is in the mythology, Hermes had a child with Aphrodite called Hermaphroditus. And remember, these are personifications. So Aphrodite, one of the things she personified was lust, right? Just like the goat symbolizes lust. So that's an important concept in this. So let's take another look at the rebus here. You have the male and the female coming together. You have the sun and the moon coming together in this divine hermaphrodite figure. The blue and the red come together to make purple. Right, so here's another image from that same episode of Friends, the one with the lesbian wedding. And I'm going to show you a few more clips, but all from this one episode. And this is Rachel's mom. She shows up 3 different times in the episode, once in blue, once in red, and once in purple. And that's how you know this episode was an alchemical ritual that they were performing on the masses. And that brings us here to the Baphomet, which is just the most modern rendition of all these concepts I'm trying to get across to you. All right, and this is what's behind, really, our society, our inner sanctum. They worship this entity here, believe it or not. So let's look at the imagery here. You got the goat's head. You got the male and female body parts. You got the light moon and the dark moon representing opposites. And then also this arm going up, this arm going down. That's as above, so below, which is a Hermetic principle. And then, of course, you got the caduceus, and look at what it's supposed to substitute. That's a very important aspect of what they believe. Because what greater force brings the masculine and feminine together? It's lust. And lust is the boundary of the masculine and feminine. It's at the crossroads, right? And this is what they worship, that boundary energy, which is not just limited to the masculine and feminine. All right? And that's, of course, this is why in the movie Dark Knight, they had the Joker dressed up as a female nurse, right? It's also why it was so fitting and it seemed so natural and correct. And of course, in the background here, you have the checkerboard for duality or opposites. In this case, it is the masculine and feminine juxtaposed together. This is also why the Wachowski brothers, who created and directed The Matrix, both became transgenders. But we'll get to that. For now, let's quickly summarize what we've learned here. All right, so we learned about duality and opposites, how that's a crucial concept for these people, with examples being order versus chaos, good versus evil, masculine versus feminine, and the physical world versus the spiritual world. We saw how Kobe and Danica Patrick both practice this in the form of alchemy, and we learned the symbols for this include the blue versus the red, the black and the white, and the fire and ice. We also learned that who these mysterious people are include the Freemasons and how they are not only fundamentally involved in founding the US, but also in the modern entertainment sphere. So their imagery has been slipped into mainstream media, including Vanessa Bryant's Obituary, the Harry Potter movies, The Matrix, and hopefully, what should be the most compelling to you, is this Missy Elliott image in the Super Bowl ad. So it's also behind the major corporations. All right? Now, we quickly explained the whole point of this belief is to lead you towards enlightenment and how you have to overcome duality in order to achieve the metaphorical philosophical stone, which basically lies between the opposites at the crossroads. Get it? So that's why they worship this god entity, the god of the crossroads, once known as Osiris or Hermes, but now mostly known as the Baphomet. Let me reiterate, these are just personifications and drawings and representations. They're actually non-physical entities. They don't look like anything. Okay? But that should be enough on duality. Let's move on.